Hi guys, Master John here. Today we're going to be going over some basic techniques in the way of walking techniques. What are walking techniques? Walking techniques are a way of practicing a move over and over again in a linear fashion where typically you go down the mat and then you turn around and you come back. You can add various techniques to it, but essentially it's a way of practicing the same thing over and over again without being distracted with having to change directions and do different moves. So you might think of it like playing scales if you're a musician, just practicing position and fluidity, so to speak. So we're going to start with the front stance and walking with it. My front stance, if I'm looking at you, I like my feet to be just a hair wider than my shoulder width. If I was to turn this way and drop down on my back knee, my knee should line up with my heel. I'm telling myself to bend my front knee until I can no longer see the toes and make my back leg as straight as possible and keep my shoulders square the whole entire time. So initially we'll be walking forward, the back foot pulls in to the other foot and then steps out, step in and step out. You'll notice that I don't bob up. So what I mean by that is when I pull my knee in, my knees stay bent as opposed to like getting tall and then getting small. Getting tall and getting small. You want to stay at one level. You'll be able to see it better from this angle. So I start here, I step out. Typically we give a key up on the very first move. Yep. So I'm going to slide in, slide over. Step in, step out. I'm focused on my posture. My eyes looking forward. Whenever you turn around, you look over the shoulder where the leg is behind you. In this case, it's my left leg. The left leg pulls in, and I step over the rest of the way with a kip. So stepping in, stepping out, usually at the behest of the instructor. Looking first, pulling in, stepping over the rest of the way. Kip! And that would be walking techniques, just walking with a front stance. If you have good walking techniques, typically that translates into having better forms. Now that we've done our basic walking techniques in a front stance, we're going to add the punch to it, the middle punch. So when you're punching, initially, if you can pull your foot in and just step out and then switch your hands, that's really all I'm looking for. There is a slightly more advanced way of activating the hip by pulling the foot in sideways, but I'll get to that in a minute. So from this angle here, we don't really just step out with a punch. So typically we would be stepping and then the teacher would say, put your left hand out, and then you would step up and punch. Now the goal is to keep your front hand out as long as possible until the foot gets into position. And then when it gets into position, that's when you would switch your hands. So you step in, step out, switch. Typically we don't turn around with a punch, so we just put the hands on the waist, pull in, step over, kip, go back to our punch. Kip. Sometimes we would turn around with a block or something, but that's the basics of stepping with your punch. If you're a little bit more adventuresome and you want to do the slightly advanced version of punching, you can do everything like you just did, but pull the back foot up so it's sideways. That automatically pulls your hip back ever so slightly. You don't need to pull your shoulder back or do anything extra. Just by virtue of the fact that you're pulling the foot up sideways, you're going to get a little bit more power in your punch. So, hope that helps. All right. Walking techniques with our low block. The low block in Korean is called a hadanmaki. You cross both hands. I'd like to think of it this way. If I'm going to block low, I'm going to start high before I bring that hand down. So I'd like to cross my hands by extending the bottom arm down, and the blocking hand comes up to the shoulder. Try not to hug your body. Try to relax and make sure this bottom arm is nice and straight. So if you want to practice in place and you've never done it before, you might go 5 times on one side, to try it the other side. So right hand is going to be doing the blocking. Notice how I don't go past the knee. I just come about 6 inches right above my knee and stop my hand right there. If you can do that, then you can square off, and then you can just practice blocking right in front of yourself. So the hand that's by the side crosses up, and then you're going to block down. The hand by the side, the new hand by the side crosses up. So if you can alternate side to side, then it would be a good time to incorporate that into your walking techniques. So I'll just do the basic version, similar to how I did the basic version with the punch, and then I'll give you a little slightly advanced tip, I guess, for doing a slightly advanced version of the low block. So if I'm coming towards you, the hand by the side crosses up, I pull my foot in, I step out into a new front stance and execute my low block. Again, I still have to focus on the other things. Bending the front knee, locking the back leg straight, keeping my posture, looking straight ahead, crossing, stepping in, stepping out from a different angle. Cross. Whenever you turn around in walking techniques, you always look over the shoulder where the leg is behind you. In this case, it's my left leg. I'm going to look, I'm going to cross, pull in, start to turn my body, and then step over the rest of the way. So one more time. So if you can go forward and cross your hands correctly, pull your foot in, and then step out, that's good. If you want to do the slightly more advanced way of doing it, in Tung Sudo, there seems to be a little bit more circular motion than in Shotokan Karate, for instance. So I like to cross my hands and start to twist my body by turning the foot out, turn, and then square back off. So turning the foot out, so that's a slightly more advanced way of doing your low block. So some thoughts that I have on walking techniques in general are that there really isn't anything fun about doing a block or a punch or anything like that. It only becomes fun when you want to try to improve yourself and develop better timing, better coordination, better focus, increase power, snap. You want to look crisp with whatever it is that you're doing. You don't want to look sloppy. So even though we might be describing something as simple as a low block, for instance, it's not just one move. It's a multitude of things that you have to think about. You need to think in terms of, like when I do my block, are my eyes focused? Am I crossing my hands correctly, or am I like hugging myself? Do I have tight fists? Are my hands kind of loose? As a judge, we pick up on all these things when you go to a tournament. Okay, do you look confident? Do you look like you know what you're doing? When you step out, did you execute it in a very crisp fashion? I'm not saying that you want to start that way. Nobody starts that way. You have to build up to it. But here I am. I'm just talking about my block, but now I'm in a stance. And is my back leg lock straight? Is my front knee nice and bent? Can I see my toes? Are my shoulders square off? What's my posture? Am I leaning? Am I a little bit too tall? So there's a multitude of things to think about. So whenever you're practicing your walking techniques, if you do them well, should help to translate into having good looking forms. There are things in the forms that actually change, and so some of the rules don't necessarily apply, but the fundamentals do. Okay, and then your attention to detail that you have in your walking techniques should translate into your forms, and you should have good looking forms as a result.